Fellas, as some of you may know, I've started a new series that has me replaying Final Fantasy XIV from the very start again. Something I haven't done since my original character, and I've got to say, I have some bones to pick. Welcome to the beginning of Final Fantasy XIV, where your gameplay is going to be about as exciting as fighting a cow in Minecraft for the next few hours. Have a blast. Now, this isn't new to me. I've never been shy about my distaste for the start of the game, but considering I'm playing it again from the first time from scratch, I felt like now was the perfect time, while it's fresh in my noggin, to actually talk about the problems and how I think they should address them. So, together, let's take ibuprofen. Let's save Final Fantasy XIV. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't seen the series Soul Lock, check it out. If I die on a job, I lose it permanently for that character. It's going to be a blast. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to be addressing multiple parts of the early game of Final Fantasy here, and talking about things all the way through to about the start of Heavensward. I do think Heavensward is not as great as it could be right now either, but I just think Realm Reborn is at a whole other level of needing touch-ups, so we won't touch on that for today. And listen, Final Fantasy XIV is my favorite game right now. I adore this game from top to bottom, so when I get a little heated here, just know that I am not shitting on the game for a lack of love. It's because I want this game to succeed even more, and what I'm addressing is probably the barrier that prevents a massive amount of new players from ever sticking with the game once they've given it a shot. Unfortunately, there will be people who hear what I'm saying and take it personally for some reason, but please try not to. This is, in my opinion, for the good of the game. And if you don't play Final Fantasy XIV and maybe you're watching the video as someone who might be wary about trying the game because you've heard about this early game problem, I want to talk to you directly for just a second. While it's not your problem that this is the case, it's really important to know about the history of Final Fantasy XIV and why Realm Reborn may feel a little bit filler-ish in comparison to what comes after it. The initial version of the game, known as 1.0, was so disastrously awful that Square Enix worried it would damage the entire Final Fantasy brand. So they brought in Naoki Yoshida, or better known as Yoshi P, to rework the game entirely. He was an avid MMO player and rebuilt the game with a new team from the ground up in only 6 months, if my memory serves correctly. This is a colossal achievement no matter what way you cut it. You have to give them credit and cut them a little slack when you acknowledge some of the weaknesses. Just know that the game does get exponentially better the further you get, and it is 100% worth it to stick through it. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's hit our first topic. Did you know the majority of people who watch my videos are not subscribed? Please subscribe so I can break 1,000 subscribers. That would be so dang cool. Anyway, our real first topic, the most glaring one of all. Job design in Final Fantasy XIV's early game is borderline unplayable for any significant period of time. Regardless of whether you're a DPS, healer, or tank, the amount of buttons you have to press in the early game is so abysmally small that it's no wonder there are a significant amount of people that quit the game saying that they just didn't have fun actively playing the game. I get the philosophy, you don't want to overwhelm people with 17 new skills from the start of the game, so surely giving them a single button, then maybe a second, and maybe a third a little bit later is the way to go. Ease people into combat without having to consider any kind of rotation or even combo that isn't just 1, 2, 3. In my opinion, this is an insult to the intelligence of every human being who decides to install and try this game. There are, of course, always going to be the exceptions, people who have disabilities or other reasons why they can't actively play games the same way others can. And for those people, I advocate and wish for the best accessibility features that offer them a way to play that suits them best. But for everyone else, having 3, 4, or 5 buttons to press by level 30 or 50 even is just something I can not get behind at all. So right now as a level 35-ish white mage and content relevant to my level, I have 1 active damage ability, 1 damage over time ability that I press every 30 seconds, a regen heal that I put on a tank, and an active heal in an AoE version of the same heal. That means the majority of my time is spent pressing 1 button over and over and... Wait a minute, that's true of white mage at level 90? Is what you might be thinking. Now, you aren't wrong. The difference is that white mage has a bajillion other tools for healing and shielding and generally taking care of people as a healer while pressing that 1 button by level 90. That's the same for all of the healers. Just like DPSs, at level 50 you might have 4 or 5 buttons that you press while doing a fight. By level 90 you have 20 or whatever. It's the same for every job, even tanks. The actions per minute in Final Fantasy skyrocket by the time you get above about level 80, and the game becomes so much more engaging at that point that it's almost night and day. I'd be here all day if I talked about it on a job by job basis, but you'll just have to trust me when I'm talking about white mage here. So What is my solution? Well, I think jobs should be slightly reworked pre-level 50. I understand that they can't fundamentally pour resources into reworking jobs entirely like this, but I think my solution works for one simple reason. All they be doing is reusing assets. So what should be in these mini reworks? I think every job should have access to an assimilation of their final kit by level 50. So let's look at White Mage, considering we're here. How would I make White Mage more enjoyable up to level 50? First of all, the fact that any job takes until level 45 to unlock an AoE ability is just shocking. Every job should have an AoE ability at level 15 by the time you hit your first dungeon. It should be a fundamental that you use AoEs on packs of mobs. Basic, but an easy fix to make jobs just a little bit better. White Mage gets a size at level 56. It's an OGCD or off global cooldown ability with a 40-second cooldown that also heals and does damage. It's a nice little button to press every 40 seconds, so give it to me at half the level, but just give me a downgraded version. Maybe it doesn't heal until it hits level 56, but still is an extra button to press that introduces the concept of pressing the OGCD between your GCD or global cooldown earlier in the game. And the potency of the ability is 400 at level 56, downgraded to 50 or 25 potency for all I care. Just give me the ability to press it. White Mage unlocks its job gauge with lilies that could be spent for healing or damage by I think about the mid 70s. Give me the job gauge at level 30 and the ability to use the OGCD heal along with it. Now I can learn that if I use OGCD healing earlier in the game, I can keep my DPS higher. It's a valuable lesson for every healer. Then give me the damaging ability at level 50 as a big unlock. Teach me that by using my healing lilies, I unlock the ability to do more damage, giving me an incentive to use them. Again, massively reduce the potency on these abilities for all I care, so that the whole balance of ARR stays relatively intact. Just give me the abilities. I didn't even touch on half of the other things White Mage ends up getting, but fundamentally what I'm saying is jobs need to have their core design introduced so much earlier, but with lower potency versions of those abilities, just to increase the job engagement and have people understand what the job will look like at level 90 or 100 when the abilities continue to upgrade to their current forms with higher potencies and lower cooldowns. I do think that this change of class design for every job up to level 50 would increase the enjoyment of new players substantially until they hit level 70 or 80. That's when I believe the true game design of current Final Fantasy XIV starts to kick in. I know it's a huge ask, but I think that this is the type of thing I'd be begging the team to work on for maybe launch at 8.0. It's a long way away, but I'm sure they understand too that the current beginning of the game just needs some touch-ups. And that leads me on to my next section, something that, to their credit, the team has been slowly but surely working on. The early game dungeons and trials. I want to give credit where credit's due. Dungeons like Totorak or Copperbell Mines are so much more enjoyable with the reworks that they've received than they were before, and all I ask is that every dungeon in the main Realm Reborn main story receives similar touch-ups. A few years ago, I would have had to go on a huge rant about the end of Realm Reborn with Praetorium and whatnot, but thankfully that's also really well done now too, so no complaints from me. My one big complaint here will have everyone that watches and plays the game wanting to shake my hand in solidarity. It's the Crystal Tower Alliance raid series. In the past, it wasn't necessary to complete this, but with Shadowbringers, it's now mandatory to continue with the story, and boy, what a letdown it is. You take a new player into Crystal Tower, you're trying to hype them up by saying that it's a big cool raid where you get to play with 24 other people, and then you fight the Bone Dragon or some other weird mini-boss. I think the Crystal Tower raid should get full gameplay reworks top to bottom. Arenas and the general areas are totally fine. I just think that they should fundamentally rework the gameplay so that they're in line with the current Alliance raids. It's fine to keep in some of the quirky aspects that I'm sure some people would moan about if they were removed, like the Atmos with the platforms. But even the Void Ark raids, one expansion later, are night and day in quality compared to Crystal Tower. They should be reworked to make the enemies, most of which are supposed to be these elegant godlike entities, seem like they're true existential threats to the entire Alliance. Give the bosses bigger and more bombastic mechanics that require a lot more active participation in the fight. Look at the first boss you run into in the Evil East raids. There's just so much more visual information going on in a way that honestly could overwhelm a first timer, but I think that's a good thing for an Alliance raid. It becomes something that feels exciting and like an actual challenge, and something that deserves to be experienced properly in the story. And save our souls when we get it for the 200th time in roulettes. So just to summarize, when it comes to the actual area design like trials or dungeons, I already think they're on the right path in bringing up the fidelity and design to Endwalker standards, so I won't touch on this too much more. And that leaves us with, finally, the story. I think the most impactful thing I can say here is that as someone who has already done a Realm Reborn once, I'm skipping all of the cutscenes and dialogue in my replay. There just isn't anything worth investing the time into again, and I dare to say it's tough to even convince someone to read it all for the first time. I know there are ARR defenders out there who enjoy it, and to each his own, but I just think that at this point it should be condensed down to maybe a third of how long it actually takes, especially post a Realm Reborn before Heavensward. We just don't need the fluff anymore. There's enough content later in the game. Take a bunch of the quests, like the one at about the level 25 mark, where you quite literally are running back and forth between two NPCs that I don't think you'll ever talk to ever again in the story, and just get rid of them. Write a new bit of dialogue that has you engaging with the main characters much more frequently to make up for the lack of these fluff quests and bridge the gaps. Look at how the story's structured in Endwalker. Very often you're going from point A to B to either talk to one of the Scions or some other very notable character in the story. We have characters like Censored, Catboy, spoiler, or Kryle that act as beacons for us to navigate the story landscape. ARR should be reworked to cut out the fat and leave in the meat that has you interacting with your main Scion a hell of a lot more. For example, I mean, say if you start in Ul'dah as a gladiator, you'd end up talking to Thinkrid maybe double the amount you actually do currently up until the story converges more. When I first started, I had this weird feeling like I didn't really know or care about the characters they were pairing me up with, Ida and Pablimo, which it makes sense considering technically they were introduced in 1.0 and they're new to our character, but I think giving people access to these characters a hell of a lot more through the ARR journey would help establish that familiarity just a wee bit more and make it feel more legit that we end up in the Science of the Seventh Dawn ourselves. There are quests that have us go to, say, Little Alamigo, for example, and talk to random NPCs for a solid 15 minutes. Why not have one of the Scions accompany us and help us gather information, just like how they do when you go to new places later in the story? Let us go talk to one or two NPCs and the Scion go talk to the others, and then we meet back up and they give us a general rundown of what they've had instead of us going and talking to 7 different NPCs spread about an area that really just don't matter for no good reason. Minor structure changes like this could cut a lot of hours off the time in ARR while still maintaining the goal of introducing us to the world and the characters themselves. Anyway, fellas, if that was the case, you'll never catch me starting anywhere outside of Limsa ever again, if you know what I'm saying. So, there you have it. Hold your applause, everyone. I know. We have truly saved Final Fantasy XIV today. All in all, I understand that the things I'm suggesting are mountains of work that would require the team to dedicate significant development time towards, and that's never easy when you have to keep the endgame players like myself on the hamster wheel without them enraging because of a lack of content. I just think that for the health of the game in the long term, these are necessary things that must be done to help ease new players into the experience and catch them up with more exciting gameplay and just that little bit faster. I never want the game to go down the route of World of Warcraft where the goal is to hit max level as quick as humanly possible. Final Fantasy XIV is always going to be as much about the journey as it is the destination. I just think A Realm Reborn is showing its age a little bit too much by now and needs a fresh lick of paint. That's all. Anyway, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.